We are going to start in verse 1. Yeah, action. Now Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, with Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Peleth, sons of Reuben, took action. Or took men. They took, the Hebrew here is just this idea that they were in control. They decided to take the bull by the horns, for so to speak. And they rose up before Moses, together with some of the sons of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, chosen in the assembly, men of renown. They assembled together against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You have gone far enough. For all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is in their midst. So why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" You can be seated. Keep your Bibles out. We're going to be using them. So we have, it's not very often I get to do the Parsha, and it's even less often that I get to do it on like my favorite one. So this is like one of my favorite parshot because of a lot of things. If I start telling you why it's my favorite, we're going to get off track. But there's just so many like good things in here. Not that good, like the Korah thing. That's not good, right? It's not good. But there are good lessons, right, that we can learn. And so here we have Korah, and he incites these people, and they rise up, and he comes to Moses and Aaron. He says, "You've gone far enough, for all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is in his midst," or in their midst. And I want to talk a little bit this morning. We're gonna elongate this today. So this is our main thing. So he says, "For all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is in their midst." I want to talk this morning about freedom, about independence, and about interdependence. So Korah says this, and I think one of the things that is missed here is the last parsha ends in chapter 15. God says to affix tzitzit, right, to the corners of your garments, and why would they do that? Why did God say to attach the tzitzit? But he said to remind them to do his commandments so that they would be holy. Right? So he says, I want you to put these tzitzit on the corners of your garment, right, with the cord of techelet, right, blue, and that is going to remind you to do my commandments and to be holy people. And there's a small difference in there between what God said and what Korah is saying. So God said, "Look at them so you'll do my commandments so that you will be holy." And then Korah turns around and says, "All of you are holy." Right? He says, he turns to Aaron and Moses and says, "Who are you? We're holy. Right? We've got this now. We're doing the right things. We're it. Right? Who do you think you are?" And so there's a big difference between aspiring or inspiring to do something and actually doing it, attaining it, right? And so God is saying, is inspiring the children of Israel to aspire to holiness, right? To aspire to do something, to be a certain way, to be pleasing to him, and then Korah takes it and says, "Oh no, we already are, right? We already are." When Moses heard this, verse 4, he fell on his face. And something is interesting about this. I think Moses, and we're going to, as we go through this, we're going to see this play out more and more, that Moses knew something that Korah and his company did not. Right? When they came to Moses and said, "Who are you?" A lot of us would turn around and say, Who am I? Who are you? Right? Like, what do you mean, who am I? Right? But he doesn't do it. He just falls on his face before the Lord. Falls on his face before the Lord. When he heard this, he fell on his face, and he spoke to Korah and all his company, saying, "Tomorrow morning the Lord will show who is his and who is holy, and will bring near to himself, even the one whom he will choose. He will bring near to himself. Do this. Take censers for yourselves, Korah and all your company, and put fire in them, and lay incense upon them in the presence of the Lord tomorrow. And the man whom the Lord chooses shall be the one who is holy. You have gone far enough, you sons of Levi. So we just celebrated Independence Day, right? The 4th of July. I hope you guys all had a good time. We usually go with my brother and sister-in-law to their house. This is like their one time a year big kind of bash, and my sister-in-law is amazing, and she bakes. She comes up with new stuff all the time, and then she keeps doing the old stuff, and the old stuff was really good. And so basically we go there, we eat a little bit of, we get a little chicken and grilled and stuff. Then we go and just gorge ourselves on all these baked goods. And so their house abuts to the place in Middleton where they shoot off all the fireworks. So literally it's, from here to the parking lot, well, it's a little bit farther. The other side of the parking lot is where they're launching the fireworks. And so it's just awesome. So anyway, so both sides of the family, everybody comes, we hang out and all that stuff. So we didn't do that yesterday. Yesterday we just hung out at a friend's house. It was very low key, but we enjoyed it. So I hope that you guys enjoyed your, not yesterday, on Thursday. But we celebrated Independence Day, right? We didn't do our normal thing, but we still celebrated it. And it's interesting, right? We're celebrating independence, right? And I think that independence is something that we're known for as Americans, right? That's the world over, especially in England. Americans are independent, and we're free thinkers. We are generally people who can do it ourselves, right? We don't need you. We don't need that. We've got it covered. and I think that's especially true here out west, right? That as you come out west, there's more of this idea of I'm on my own, I can do it myself, and I think it probably came from being out here and there's nobody around for hundreds of miles, and you are by yourself, or you have to do it where nobody else is. But here in Idaho, that's so true, right? That I know so many people that's you can't help them if you wanted to, right? And so if I need help, I'll let you know. So I feel like we have this culture of not wanting to be dependent on somebody, on anybody, that we view dependence, and we've talked about this before, that we view dependence as a weakness. That if I'm dependent on you, if I'm dependent on something else, then that means that I couldn't myself, and that says that I'm a weak person, and I'm lacking in some way. And so we want to resist that. We say, okay, I can do it myself. I'm going to struggle through whatever it is, and I'm going to just go it alone. I'm going to go on my own. I want to stand on my own 2 feet. And I think, as a culture, we don't just celebrate our independence from the crown of England, right? This was, even hundreds of years ago, but we celebrate something else, right? That we're not beholden to anybody. If I want to do something, I can, and often I do. I make my own decisions, and I go where I want. I do what I want with whom I want, when I want, unless I have to work, right? And then suddenly we're not as independent. But the idea is that we celebrate this independence, and Independence Day isn't just about as a country that we threw off shackles of ruling monarchy across the pond, but I think it's come to be this celebration of, yes, we are free people, right? Isn't this part of what we celebrate is our freedom. Well, what is that freedom for? Is that freedom is so that we can do what we want, so that we can be here today doing what we want to do, right? We can worship God and not have somebody come to knock our door down with a gun or something and take us away, right? We have freedom and liberty, and sometimes that leads us to do things that we can do, but maybe we shouldn't do. So Korah and his cohort, right? they're wanting something that's not for them. They misunderstood God's command, and they didn't understand how to live the life that God had provided to them to live. Right? God had given them independence, right? He'd given them freedom. He delivered them from Egypt. And now they were out crossing the wilderness and in the desert, and he's sustaining them with manna and water. And so now they've been freed, but they haven't been freed from God. Right? They hadn't been freed to do whatever they wanted. There were still boundaries within that freedom. Right? So God says, you are free to do what you want inside this area, right? Inside these protective walls, this protective fence, and if you stay within here, now you'll experience freedom. But Korah and his company didn't want to do that, right? They said, God, that's not enough. So let's go on. Verse 8. Moses said to Korah, hear now, you sons of Levi. Is it not enough for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the rest of the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the service of the tabernacle of the Lord, stand before the congregation to minister to them, and that he has brought you near, Korah and all your brothers, sons of Levi, with you? And are you seeking the priesthood also? Therefore you and all your company are gathered together against the Lord. But as for Aaron, who is he that you grumble against him? This is what Moses recognized. This is what he picked up on, that Korah and his cohort missed. This is the fundamental underpinning that you've gone astray, right? Moses fell to the ground because he recognized that these guys aren't an affront to me. These guys are an affront to God. And God have mercy on them, right? Isn't it enough, that he's brought you near and to serve? That's not enough for you. Now you're seeking the priesthood also, right? This is a major row. This is a major argument, a major fight, a major battle between Korah and God himself. Right? By complaining against God's appointed leader, namely in this case Aaron, Korah was actually complaining against Hashem. Right? He's saying, Hashem, what you've done is not good enough. You were a few marbles short when you handed out the duties around here. You must have been having a bad day. Maybe you forgot your coffee that morning. I don't know really what to say for you, but it's okay. I'm here. I'm going to make it right. I'm going to straighten things out for you, God. Right? Don't worry, Korah says. I'm here to save you. Right? And how many times do we tell God, either by the things that we say or the things that we do, you know what? I'll fix it. You screwed up, I can see that you thought you had this handled, and we walked down this path so far, and I can tell that things are out of hand, so I'm gonna take it from here. God, you screwed up, but I'm going to fix it for you. Right? This is so many times what God might lay something on our heart and say, okay, I want you to do this. I want you to go here. I want you to make a change in your life. And at the outset, yeah, let's do it. Great idea. I'm in, right? And we start going down the path, and this is great, and everything is awesome. Anyway, and so we're going down, and we hit a snag. Right? Things start going against us. And at first we might say, well, okay, I knew things were going to be a little difficult. I get it, but okay, we're just going to, then there comes a point where we think, God, this can't be you. Things are just so hard. This is not what I expected. You told us that you told me it was going to be this thing over here, and now does it look like that to you right now? Because it doesn't look like that to me. I know that's what you said, and so you must have just gotten off track a little bit. So I'm going to take control back. I'm taking the reins. We're going this way. Does that sound familiar? Am I the only one that does that? Maybe. No, hopefully not. Okay. Thank you, Joy. So many times we say, okay, God, you know what? You've gone far enough. This is good. I'll take over, right? And let's look what happens. Jump down to verse 12. Maybe that's where we're already at. I don't know. Yeah, verse 12. Then Moses sent a summons to Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab. But they said, we will not come up. Is it not enough that you brought us up out of a land flowing with milk and honey to have us die in the wilderness? Is it not enough? Aren't you satisfied with yourself? Look at what you've done. You've stolen us out of this land of abundance and plenty and blessing, just to die here in this wilderness. Is it not enough? But you would also lord it over us. Indeed, you've not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor have you given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. Would you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up. You can't fool us. Right? We know what's going on. We can see clearly. Right? You have a log in your eye, Moses. And this sounds very familiar. There's a few chapters earlier, actually in the last Parsha, Numbers 14. After the spies come back and they give the report, and the children of Israel say, why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the swords? Our wives and our little ones will become plunder. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? So they said to one another, let us appoint a leader and return to Egypt, that land flowing with milk and honey and free fish and leeks and garlics and why did we ever leave? What was wrong? What were we thinking? We let this guy dupe us into going out into this wilderness. Let's go back to Egypt. Man, do you remember Egypt? Do you remember Egypt? Right? A land of bondage and slavery where, for the Israelites, where their children were murdered in front of them, tossed into the Nile. This is the kind of milk and honey that they were forgetting. Right? Do you remember what it was like to slave for a master who didn't care if you lived or if you died? And when I think about the Israelites, like I've been, when I was a kid, I grew up in the church, and I don't ever remember this story being in Sunday school. There's probably some reasons for that. But I read the Bible, right? And I just remember thinking, like, what is wrong with these guys? Like, why would they forget so fast? Right? I mean, I didn't even live through that, and these guys lived through this horrible circumstance, and they're suddenly saying that this is a land flowing with milk and honey, and what are we thinking? Let's go back. It was so good for us back there. What do you... I don't think they had crack back then, but I'm just like, what are you on? Like, somehow you're forgetting. I mean, I don't get this. And so I'm just trying to figure out. And then at some point I think about, like, somehow I'm perplexed that they forget that their slavery was what it was, and somehow it's been turned into this amazing life that they used to have, and here they are telling Moses, we're not blind, my friend. We see what you're doing. We're on to you, and we know what's going on. The gig is up. And then I think about my own life, and I think about what are the things that God has brought me out of? What are the things that I've left behind that sometimes I think about and I think, man, remember back then? Things weren't this hard. Remember, things were it was so simple. Life was just simple. It It was so much easier than it is now. Okay? And if I don't catch myself, I'm wanting Egypt again. I am these things that God has delivered me from, these things that were bondage, that were terrible, that I hated, that I couldn't get out of myself, that God came and said, it's okay, I will do it for you. And I'm saying, I want to go back there? Why? Because things are uncomfortable? Because I don't like the change that God is bringing about in my life? That I don't like the pressure that I'm under? Because, when metal is refined, there's a lot of heat, right? There's a lot of pressure. There's things that are difficult for that till the impurities come to the top, right? When I'm under pressure, this is when I blow up and I say, oh, and then God says, yes, that's the slag right there. That's what I want out, right? But it's only in those difficult times. And so in those times, if I'm wanting Egypt, then I'm abandoning this that God has given me. And here's the thing. In that moment, when I'm wanting to go back, when I'm wanting these other things, I'm free. Now, I'm free from it, but I'm also free to choose it, right? Nobody's going to stop me, likely. And I could go right back to it. I'm a free man. I could do what I want. Hey, ain't nobody going to tell me what to do, right? The Israelites were free. They've been delivered out of this bondage, out of this horrible life, and they could do what they want. And yet, what do they want to do with it? What do sometimes we want to do? We want to use that freedom to go back into bondage, right? To go back into slavery. Galatians 5, verse 1 says, it was for freedom that Messiah set us free. Therefore, keep standing firm and do not be subject again to a yoke of slavery. Keep standing in your freedom and don't be subject to a yoke of slavery. In chapter 5, a few verses later, in verse 13, it says, for you are called to freedom, brothers, only do not turn your freedom into an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word, in the statement, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So don't use your freedom. Don't use your freedom for slavery, right? Don't use your freedom for bondage. Don't those what Shaul says at some point. All things are lawful for me, but not all things are beneficial, right? And I won't come under the power of any. What is he saying? I'm not going to be a slave again. I'm not submitting myself again to be a slave to my body, to my flesh. That was the real slavery, right? Being in bondage to my own sinful desire and following my body and whatever it wanted to do, and my mind and whatever it wanted to think, and my mouth and whatever it wanted to say, and all of these things, right? But I've been delivered from that. Now I have freedom. So now that we're here, how we have that, let's continue in that. And so here we have Israel saying, I want that bondage. Give me some of that, right? Verse 15, Numbers 16:15. Then Moses became very angry and said to the Lord, do not regard their offering. I have not taken a single donkey from them, nor have I done harm to any of them. Moses said to Korah, you and all your company be present before the Lord tomorrow, both you and they along with Aaron. Each of you take his fire pan and put incense on it, and each of you bring his censer before the Lord, 250 fire pans. Also you and Aaron shall each bring his fire pan. So they each took his own censer and put fire on it and laid incense on it, and they stood at the doorway of the tent of meeting with Moses and Aaron. Thus Korah assembled all the congregation against them at the doorway of the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord appeared to all the congregation. I think we know how this turns out, right? Not to spoil the story for you, right? But these guys end up, roast Korah. What happened? What happened, right? Like Korah and his compadres here, they said, we're free and we're holy. God said that, look, hey, we're doing it, right? We've got it. We see it. We are. Therefore, like, hey, you're not any better than us. But what did God say? God said, look, here's a boundary. If you stay within the boundary, you're going to be great, right? Life is good. You're going to have freedom. You're going to have liberty. And guess what, Korah? Most people, their boundary kind of like stops over here. But you get to come over here. And he says, you know what? That freedom isn't good enough for me. I want more. I want more freedom. That freedom isn't free enough. And so I think Korah is breaking free from the freedom that God has given to him. And I think if we look around our country, if we look around the world, but especially our country right now, what is going on? Everybody's throwing off restraint, saying, no, this is not freedom. I want to be able to call myself whatever gender I want. I want to be able to imagine that I'm entitled to all kinds of things, and that's freedom, right? That I should have the freedom to do what I want and stay at home and have everybody take care of me, or whatever it might be, right? And what does God say? God says, no, there's boundaries here. No, there's things that are here for your own protection, right? God has given us in his word this area that's safe to play in, right? And as long as we're within that area, then we're free. But when we throw off freedom for independence, right, we're going down a dangerous path, right? So we don't want to use our freedom to be independent of God. We don't want to say, when sin abounds, grace abounds much more. Therefore, I'm just going to let grace abound a bunch, right? Right? Don't use your freedom for slavery. 1 Peter 2:16 says, act as free men, and do not use your freedom as a covering for evil, but as bond slaves of God. Do not use your freedom as a covering for evil, but as bond slaves of God. Use your freedom as to be a slave. Right? And isn't this, when we look at Israel, isn't this what happens? They come out of Egypt. God delivers them from true bondage and brings them out to Sinai and says, hey, I'll be your God and you will be my people. What do you say? And they say, all that the Lord has spoken we will do. Right? It's good. It sounds good to us. Then they forgot who their master was. And so, this is the lesson, right? That we shouldn't look at our freedom in Messiah and say, well, I'm just going to throw off restraint. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to, you know what? God will, it's okay. I can just ask for forgiveness or whatever. Like, we have to be careful that, no, we don't want to cross that boundary, right? As long as we're inside, we're free. It's interesting. It's almost like the devil is standing on the other side sometimes, or even our own desire, right? It says in James that everybody's led away and enticed by our own desire, right? It doesn't say the devil comes in yet. It's like our desire or the devil or whatever's on the other side of this barrier saying, man, it's good over here. It is awesome. You're going to love it. Come on. Except when we get there, it's never as good as the flyer, right? It's just, the advertisement is way better than the experience. And so God says, stay within bounds. I move around too much for this thing. All right. So let's go on to number 17. We're not too far away here. Number 17, actually, if you have a Tanakh, it's number 17. If you have the usual Bible, it's number 16, verse 50, or 41. Number 1641 or 17:6, if you have a Tanakh. But on the next day, so now we've gone through, and Korah and his company are toast, and Moses says, if God hasn't spoken to me, and I'm just out on my own, let these guys just die of natural causes. Otherwise, if God does something new and the earth opens up and swallows them alive, then you know that they've sinned against God, and He's doing this, right? And guess what happens? The coolest thing in the whole Bible. One of the coolest. Okay. Yeah. So maybe you don't share my enthusiasm over this. That's okay. It's probably better that way. So anyway, so the earth opens up and swallows up Nathan Korah and his company, they were toasted, but I'm trying to think of Dathan. There we go. Dathan and Abiram, right? And all of their stuff, and they're swallowed up. And so then what happens, right? The next day, all the congregation of the children of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, saying, "You are the ones who have caused the death of the Lord's people." It came about, however, when the congregation had assembled against Moses and Aaron, that they turned toward the tent of meeting, and behold, the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. Uh-oh. This is like Dad coming home, right? You've been misbehaving all day. It's not good. Then Moses and Aaron came to the front of the tent of meeting, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Get away from among this congregation, that I may consume them instantly." Then they fell on their faces. Moses said to Aaron, "Take your censer and put in it fire from the altar, and lay incense on it. Then bring it quickly to the congregation and make atonement for them, for wrath has gone forth from the Lord. The plague has begun." And Aaron took it as Moses had spoken, and ran into the midst of the assembly. For behold, the plague had begun among the people. So he put on the incense and made atonement for the people. He took his stand between the dead and the living, so that the plague was checked. The plague was stopped. But those who died in the plague were 14,700, besides those who died on account of Korah. Then Aaron returned to Moses at the doorway of the tent of meeting, for the plague had been checked. This is one of the coolest scenes in the Bible, because it's like, God comes up and he says, "Okay, that's it, I'm done." And there's not, like, he's so fed up, there's not even time for Moses to say, whoa, right? He's like, "No, so he tells Aaron, "Hey, take your censer and run out." And it's, I imagine if anybody's seen like Braveheart or something like some kind of epic movie where this hero is got to run out, right? So Aaron puts fire, and he puts the incense, and he takes it, and he's running out, and he goes out and he throws out the incense, and suddenly the last person dies, and this guy's standing right there like, right? The next guy was going to die is standing right there in front of Aaron. That's just the coolest scene. And I think that one of the things that it communicates, Korah started this whole thing saying, "Hey, all of the congregation are holy, bro. Who do you think you are?" And here, we see that all of the congregation needed Aaron. Right? There was a delineation. There was something that was different. There was that boundary. And it wasn't just about that boundary, but that Aaron provided a function. Aaron had been given a duty. Aaron had been set apart for a purpose. And if it wasn't for Aaron, right, that guy that was standing there with fear in his eyes wouldn't have been. Right? Everybody would have been laid out. They were interdependent on him. Right? One of the things about the Levites, right, is they don't have an inheritance. They didn't get land. A little city here and there, but there wasn't sustenance. And aside from what God had provided with the services and that they provided the people, and in fact there wasn't really a path to riches for them. In fact, in the Babylonian captivity, they had a hard time getting enough priests and Levites to come back to the land. But here's the thing, is that the Levites needed the people too, right? The priests need the people, and the people need the priests. The Levites are the same thing, right? There's this interconnection between them. And how, bring it home. Like, what are you saying here, right? I'm not saying that some of us are Levites and priests and some of us ain't. That's not the point. The point is that if we're the body of Messiah, that we need one another, right? We can't use our freedom for independence and think that we're going to be okay. But just in this one story, we see how all of these players needed one another, even if they didn't recognize it. And so I'm saying that we need each other, even if we don't necessarily recognize it or think that we do, or see the benefit of investing and giving of ourselves. And because, my weakness is your strength, right? I need your strength to fulfill in my weakness, and vice versa, right? That as a community, like, we need one another. And how what does Shaul say? If all the body was a mouth, what would the hearing be? Or, right, like, if we're all fulfilling the same function, we're lacking majorly. And so my encouragement today is that we celebrate the freedom that we have in Messiah, that the freedom that he's given to us, that we're no longer slaves, that he's brought us out of sin and bondage and that sort of thing, and to live the life that he's given us to live. And that life is a life that's interconnected with one another. That life is a life where we're interdependent on each other. And so, when we look at Korah, it's really easy to see the insurrectionists, right? When we think of this story, it's easy to see a rebel. And I think what I want us to think of when we think of Korah, when we think of what happened in the story, is that I want us to remember that Korah and his ilk, I don't get to use that word very often, Korah and his ilk wanted freedom apart from God. Right? They wanted freedom apart from God, outside of the boundaries that God has given to them. We were talking about boundaries, gosh, it's been a couple months ago now, but you should go, it's worth listening to again. They wanted independence from God's order, and they didn't want to be interdependent on those God had given them to complement and complete their roles. Let's determine to maintain the freedom we've been given within the boundaries God has given us, the natural, spiritual, and otherwise. By accepting and respecting the individual roles God's given to each of us, together we make an entire body that's complete and full and healthy. And finally, let's also determine to step up and fill the gap that only we as individuals can fill, so that the body of Messiah will be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Amen. Let's go ahead and stand. Father God, we love you. We thank you for not just your commandments, but God, we thank you for the heart that you have towards us as your people, that we don't have to go it alone, that we're not expected to do it all. But God, you've provided for us, Lord, the means and the people in our lives to shore up areas that are difficult for us. And you've given us to them to help them in the areas they need help in also. Lord God, I pray that you would show us, Lord, how to complement the body of Messiah. Lord, how to support our community here, how to support our friends and our neighbors in the role that you've called us to, Father God. Lord, we thank you for, Lord, your spirit that you've poured out on us to empower us to, Lord, to see with eyes of faith, God, not just with our own understanding, but God, I pray that you would reveal to us, Lord, things that maybe we haven't seen before. that maybe I can help out here, or maybe this is something that God would have me do. God, Lord, I pray that you'd lead us, that you would guide us, and that you would help us to be perfect and complete, Father. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.